Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by David Schomer, the e-commerce growth engineer who turns stores into profit machines. For 15 years, he's helped founders double, triple, even 10x revenue by swapping guesswork for proven systems. David's journey began at a roadside sweet corn stand in rural Iowa, where he mastered pricing and traffic before most kids had a driver's license. Today, as CEO of Build, Grow, Scale, where he oversees over 300 SKUs across Amazon, Walmart, and Shopify, squeezing every ounce of margin through relentless optimization. I've asked him to join us here today to share his story and insights on predictable scaling, sharper funnels, bigger payouts, and building cash flow on demand. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Daryl. I'm looking forward to recording a podcast with you.
Yeah, we've had a couple of good conversations. I'm glad to have you on the show. Before we kind of get into the e-commerce and profit optimization, how did you even get into this? I mean, it sounds like obviously you worked a stall on the side of the road or something. I mean, were your parents entrepreneurs? Did they have their own e-commerce store back in the days of dial-up or what?
No, but I will tell you, I grew up in rural Iowa, and there were two things that happened to me during that time that really made me like e-commerce. The first is we lived in small town Iowa, and if we needed to go get a part for the tractor, we would spend half a day in the car going in to figure out that most of the time they didn't have it. But then we found out about eBay Motors, and we were able to order the exact tractor part that we needed, and it'd show up in a couple days. It was great. It gave us access to the same types of products in a small town that you would have in a big town. And the second thing that happened was we lived on a little acreage, and me and my brothers had a corn stand. It was a roadside corn stand.
Yeah, I love it.
And we had happy hour. You come between 4 and 6 p.m. We'll shuck your corn for you. And we had a coffee can, and it was just on the honor system starting out. People would take some corn, leave some money. It was great. And we then ventured into pumpkins, and we scaled that business into, at the end, we were doing several thousand pumpkins a year, and people were coming to pick their own. It was great. And that gave me an interest in business. And that interest in e-commerce flared up again when I was in college. I would buy my buddies' textbooks and resell them over the summer. I had a pickup truck, and I would load that pickup truck up with so many textbooks that the box almost touched the springs. And I drive home to Iowa for the summer and sell them on half.com and Amazon and eBay. And that was a great little side hustle. So e-commerce has been a part of my life for a long time. And I believe to my core, it's a better shopping experience.
Yeah, I love that. I did an email newsletter a while back where I showed a picture of one of those on your honor food stalls. I'm like, this is the original sort of, I don't know if drop shipping is the right word, but you have a sign, it's traffic and conversion. You've got a black box system somehow where you've got products and services, inventory on shelf, whatever it is, and it sits there and it's traffic times conversion. You got to have interested people coming by and you pick it up. And it's just like such a simple and original business model. And I actually saw this yesterday. I took my daughter to Ocean Park. We went to this mall nearby, and there's a Japanese store. I've seen that in Tokyo a lot, but it's just those little machines. You put a coin in, you turn the thing, you get the ball, you pop it open, you get a toy. But that's all it is. And it's like walls of them. Like as tall, I'm 6'4". It's as high up as I am tall. It's just walls of them. They've got like a little, it's almost like a coffee shop, but there's no coffee. There's no shop. It's just like tables, chairs, and then all these vending machines. And it's because they just have them there. And it's traffic times conversion. We fill this place with this many teens, and every percentage of teen makes this many purchases. And so I love that. It's just a good, simple business model. Do you find that the Your Honor system worked pretty well? Did you ever have to wake up and go, oh, man, somebody stole all our inventory? Or
I get that question a lot. And what I would say is, were there times that people took corn? Yes. And
right.
our opinion on that is if you're going to steal $3 worth of sweet corn, you need it. Go ahead and take it. Not a big deal. Oftentimes, people would leave a tip. They knew it was kids, similar to a lemonade stand. We charged $3. They'd put a $5 in there. And so the tips more than made up for it. Yeah. And you could say, well, that was back in the 90s. You couldn't do that again today. And I would argue that people are generally good, and this business model would still work. Right. I, in fact, am a beekeeper, and I want to teach my son about business. And so we're starting him a little honey business this year. We're keeping track of our expenses. We're looking at revenue coming in. Of course, some of that will be to family and friends, but we are going to try the roadside model again. And I believe people are good. And especially, ripping off a little kid. There's a
Right.
special place in hell for
Right.
people like that. And so we're going to give it a try in 2025. And I'm believing that it's going to work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends. If you get somewhere where there's like a mass mob, it's almost like, I think it depends on this volume of people, but for the most part, like you say, I think genuinely people are good. I like that and I appreciate that. Beekeeping for your son. You're not worried about him getting stung?
I'll tell you what, when you have a suit on and gloves, when you have the proper gear, you are invincible. I mean, there really is not a lot of opportunities to get stung. Now, have I been stung before? Certainly. And will he get stung? Certainly. However, we've navigated 2 summers with no stings. That's important to me. I want it to be a good experience.
Yeah.
And selfishly, I want to have a beekeeping buddy for the
Yeah.
rest of my life.
Yeah. Why
So
beekeeping? I'm curious.
my wife and I moved out to a little acreage, and I learned that if you were to put just an acre into, say, a field for a cow, you could get that acre designated as agricultural and save on property taxes. However, we had 20 acres.
Hmm.
And so we have designated our entire property as agricultural, except a third an acre for our house. And because the bees use our entire property. And so it was
Hmm.
initially a tax strategy. I'm a retired CPA, and it's totally within the rules of our municipal laws. And so I got into it, but that's what got me into it. What's kept me in it is it's pretty low maintenance. We go out and check on the hives, but if you get a dog and that dog's misbehaving, you can correct that behavior. But if bees are doing something you don't want, you can't yell at them. They're not going to listen to you. And so you're more of an observer. And a couple times a year, you go collect some excess honey, and that's everybody likes honey. It's a
Yeah.
great thing to give out. I put my contact info on it, and I say, if you know of any multifamily properties in Jefferson County, Missouri, if you send me a referral and I close on it, I'll give you $1,000. And so it's kind of a calling card. And the reason that's a great calling card, most business cards end up in a drawer. If you give somebody a bottle of honey, it could be in their pantry for a year. It
Yeah.
never goes bad, and people enjoy it. So I'm a huge fan of honey and a huge fan of beekeeping.
I think it's brilliant. I'm into online and offline income myself. I feel like in today's day and age, you really need to have, first off, hats off to you for having the land. I think that not enough people. I want to normalize buying 100 acres with friends and raising your families together. That's very commendable. I love the bee thing. My first thought about, because the reason why I'm going down this rabbit hole is I actually thought about getting a couple of beehives, not getting into it full scale or anything, but just when I was in Vietnam, I got really big into growing mushrooms. I was growing reishi and all sorts of stuff. And I'd throw, because I take the reishi as a supplement, I'd throw it out in the yard. And I remember when I first did that, it was just like a signal, like a bat signal went off, and the yard became full of bees. And they were all over the reishi. And I found out that there's all parasite that apparently is infecting a huge percentage of the bee population. This is important, people, because if we don't have the bees, we're all dead. So this is important. We get this knowledge out there. But apparently reishi helps keep the bees healthy. So I never knew that. I thought that was great. So now we've got a dragon fruit farm. I got 800 dragon fruit, and I'm actually looking to get some hardwood logs to inoculate with reishi to put around the yard to hopefully bring more bees. But also because I was like, man, for what it'll take me to do in an hour, I could save the whole neighborhood, so to speak, from any sort of funk, like all sorts of stuff. Anyhow, so that was cool. That's super cool. So, all right. So
Absolutely.
you got started with the fruit stand, and then what? You're like, I'm going full into online businesses. You just took a leap.
No, so I went to school and studied accounting and finance. And upon graduation, I had the entrepreneurial itch, but I didn't have capital and I didn't have any ideas. And I had an opportunity to go work at a consulting firm in St. Louis called Reuben Brown. And I did mergers and acquisitions. I
Hmm.
investigated Ponzi schemes. I did business valuation and just a hodgepodge of different consulting activities. And it was an outstanding experience. I learned a ton about business and got to see a lot of different businesses. And if I look at my career and just growth, I feel like that was getting my PhD in run a business.
Right.
Going in and poking holes and showing businesses where they can improve and seeing 50 transactions of businesses being bought and sold. It was a really good experience. And I ended up doing that for 7 years.
Wow.
And that entrepreneurial itch never went away. And I started, I think it would have been 5 years into my career. I started a pet supply company, an Amazon business, just as a side hustle. And I was doing all the consulting activities like cash flow modeling for my little business. Everything that I was learning how to do at work, I'd implement with this business. And I had taken 2 exams, the CPA and the CFA exams. And the CFA exam was 3 years, probably 2,000 hours of studying. Like it was a heavy lift. And I would study from 4:30 in the morning until 7, and I'd go to work. And when I got done with those exams, I was still in the habit of waking up at 4:30 in the morning and doing something productive before I went to work. And so that's what I did. I just continued on building this side hustle 2.5 hours a day and started adding SKUs, adding suppliers. And during this time, I started a podcast called Firing the Man. And what I was doing with the then co-host Ken Wilson was documenting my journey of building up this side hustle and quitting my job or firing the man. And that's what I did. I had that podcast for, it would have been about 1.5 years while I had my corporate job. And then I successfully fired the man and have been involved in e-commerce ever since. And so running my own private label businesses through 80/20 Capital. Currently, I'm the CEO of Build, Grow, Scale. It's a conversion rate optimization agency for Shopify stores. And yeah, I love e-commerce and I love running my own businesses and I like helping other entrepreneurs crush it.
So what do you think are the biggest mistakes you see people making? I mean, with 7 years of, like you said, investigating Ponzi schemes and looking under the hood of businesses and seeing their warts and all, and now having worked with a ton of clients, what are the biggest potholes people just get tripped up in?
Yeah, one mistake that I made personally a lot when I started out was I would launch products that the economics did not work. And there's an exercise that I go through on every product launch called fail on paper. I look at the average sale price. I get an idea of what that product would cost to make. I look at FBA fees. I look at shipping. And the thing I like about e-commerce is almost all of that information is known or knowable in most instances. Now, if you're inventing a totally new product, there's not a market for it. You have no way to test price, but in most instances, you can test price. And I can tell you early on in my e-commerce career, my basement was full of failed product launches. And now at my warehouse, I still have a couple failed product launches.
I was going to say, which one do you love the most? Like, which is the failure? Like, I just think these things are great, but nobody.
I'm glad that you asked me that question. This is a great example of failing on paper. I got my CPA, and in the mornings, I'd eat a bowl of cereal and I'd look at my study guide. And I always thought, if all of these equations that I need to memorize were on a mug and I could carry that mug around with me all day long, I would do it. And so I interviewed 50 people that had recently passed the test and what's the most important equations to remember for the exam. And then I got a Tervis mug. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand, but it was a curated study guide of every equation you need to memorize. And placed my initial order of 500. And I'll tell you, I probably have 480 sitting over at my warehouse. And that's a great example of failing on paper. About 3,500 people take the exam every year. And so if I were to sell a mug to every single one of those people, I'm not getting rich. And I know I'm not going to sell it to everyone. I'm probably going to sell it to 1% of them. And so that was a known or knowable thing that I should have thought about beforehand, and just knowing my market size. And so that's something that I really think is a good thing. And there is such a thing, and Daryl, you probably have had this. There's an entrepreneurial high. Like it's a buzz where you got a new idea, you're sitting at your laptop, just cranking away. You're so excited. And it's really easy to get caught in that wave and not pause and say, like, does this pencil out? And so, there's a lot of things I look at, but one rule of thumb is my landed cost. So your unit cost that you pay the supplier plus any shipping plus any tariffs. You take that number, say it's $5, you multiply it by 4. That's your minimum selling price in an e-commerce atmosphere. Now, if your average order value gets above 50, there's some wiggle room on that, but there are some products that I've launched, and when I look at that metric, it may have been 2 or 2.5x. Like, it appeared that there was meat on the bone. Oh, I can buy it for 15 and sell it for 30. But by the time you bake in a 15% referral fee from Amazon,
Yep,
an
yep.
FBA fee, long-term storage fees, shipping, paying someone at the warehouse, you will not have any more meat on the bone. And so I would say that's a mistake I see a lot of people make, and one I've made personally.
Yeah, I love that. So you're saying a minimum 4x markup is where you got to start, a minimum.
And,
Yeah.
I've got products that are 8 and 10x, and that's great.
10x, if you can get 10x, because people don't take into account the cost of acquisition. I saw this thing the other day. I think it was on Dollar Shave Club, and I forget what it was, but it was like the Dollar Shave Club has something like a $900 per client acquisition. They got bought out by Unilever for $1.2 billion. HubSpot, which is a major CRM, they pay something like $4,000 per new customer. And so a lot of people just don't realize how much it takes to acquire. And that's why so many people just stick to word of mouth and referrals. But that's also why so many people are just above broke, because they're not willing to invest, and figure out those numbers. That's what David's talking about right now. For those of you listening, is probably one of the most important things to really grasp is, what's your cost of goods sold and what's your lifetime customer value? And that is so mission critical. Just those two numbers alone, if you don't know those, you're in trouble. You're flying blind. I give a great example from personally. I had a martial arts school, and I knew on average, a typical student would buy $946 worth of martial arts instruction from me. But on average, I only collected 818 of that. Now, I knew what my net profit was overall in a year of operating the business. And so one of the things that I offered was basically $130 worth of free gear once people joined with me. And I remember I was in a small town at the time, like 100,000 people. And there's maybe 5 martial arts schools at the time. And my competitors, like, Daryl's crazy, stupid. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to make himself go bankrupt. But I made myself an offer because for me, wholesale, I think my cost wholesale was like $60 or something like that for the equipment that I gave them. But now when someone's looking to join, they can join with me, and you know what I mean? And they can pay me for the first month and get more and more value at the beginning in equipment for free, or they can go join my competitor and pay twice as much just to start. And for a lot of people, that'd be a deal breaker, right? I mean, there's lots of other things. Is the school good? Is that good? But it allowed me to have a competitive advantage because I was willing and able to pay more to get the customer to come to me. So I had a juicier carrot hanging out in the market. And my competitors, they just understand the math. They were like, "Oh, Daryl's terrible at business," but I got to 6 figures in like less than a year, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. When people say you buy it for 5 and sell it for 20 at a minimum, you're ripping people off. It's like, no, because everyone's going to take a slice of that pie, and that cost of customer acquisition is, I would say, on average, like if you look at ad spend divided by revenue, I think a really lean e-commerce company would run at about 10%, 10% tacos. I think there's a large percentage of people that are around 20 to 25%. And for all of our ROAS folks, that'd be a 4 ROAS. And so, yeah, that's a huge part. And when you're going through a product launch, it's not a sexy part of the process. It's much more fun to talk about logos and cool packaging and all of that stuff. It's a bore, but sit in your seat, get in Excel, and it doesn't need to be pretty, but go through that exercise. And, you had mentioned mistakes. One other observation that I have, and this is so simple, sell nice stuff. It's just sell high quality things. And when you sell middle of the road products, people aren't going to leave reviews. It's harder getting customers to come back. And if you can sell a product that you're proud of, one that you could send every member of your family.
Would you be proud to show your grandma? That's a great question. Would I be proud to show my grandma this?
Absolutely.
She might not buy it, but would she be like, wow?
Yeah. And that's more challenging. You need to talk to more suppliers. You need to order more samples. It's a tougher thing to do, but once you launch a product, you're in a way kind of married to it. And so making sure it's high quality and rock solid on the front end will make everything after that easier.
And how do you recommend someone launch a product? I mean, I know there's 101 YouTube videos and XYZ there, but for you, in your experience, do you have like a 5-step process if someone is coming out the gate?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like where or just like the processes that I follow.
Well, yeah, like how do you launch it? So, okay, David, I got a great product. I got a world-class thing. I got something. Maybe I did a trade show and I won an award for best product of the year, but really I'm just in obscurity and nobody knows I even exist. I got no list. I got nothing. How do I launch this product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say one of your first missions is to find somebody to make it. And I'm in private label. I have had my own factories, but for the most part, I'm sourcing, buying at wholesale prices and selling at retail. And that's going to be one of your biggest assets in relationships in your businesses with your manufacturer. And in order to do that, I have found that it's very helpful to be specific. I would like this to be 18 inches long. I would like this to be black. And so I will usually sketch out a drawing and make it as detailed as I can. I want it to be this material. And I will send that to them.
If I have my product, yeah. What if I have my product though? Now what?
So you've already got it sourced. Where do you launch?
Yeah, like where and how do I launch it?
I would say there's two camps of people. The first camp is people with an audience. I would say sell it to that audience on a Shopify store. Most people don't have an audience, and your friends and family can only get you so far. And, you know, I think a blend of Amazon, Etsy, and Shopify is generally a pretty good recommendation for most businesses. Now, you want to ask yourself, where do my customers hang out? You know, some people would say, oh, don't waste your time with eBay. But if you're selling auto parts, eBay Motors is still one of the kings. And so, you know, we can talk platform, but I think the conversation really needs to be, where do my customers hang out? And that's known or knowable. Hop in a Facebook, say you're doing kitchen utensils, hop in a Facebook group, ask people, hey, where's your favorite place to buy X? And, you know, do some market research. But I would say Amazon, Etsy, and Shopify are a good thing to go after. And I'll give some advantages and disadvantages of both. People like to rag on Amazon, and they are sometimes challenging to deal with. They do shut accounts down. There are a lot of people that like to poo-poo on Amazon. However, I will tell you there are millionaires made on Amazon every single day. And in terms of a mall, it is a giant mall. It's the biggest mall in terms of market share. And so I think it's helpful to picture it as like a physical place and how many people are showing up there. You know, 200 million people in the US are showing up there every year. Wow. And you know, from a conversion rate standpoint, people have the Prime credit card, they have Amazon Prime. Like, Amazon's created a good ecosystem. And so I think Amazon's a great spot to launch. Now, what do you need? You need copy, you need photos, and you need video. Well, once you have that asset, you might as well take it over to Shopify and plug those assets in. And Etsy is, I would put that in third place, but I like Etsy. They generally have low fees. It's pretty simple. And this is going to be a funny thing to say. The customers are kinder. They're much more, they're 3 times as likely to leave a review. They're like very pleasant to deal with in customer service. If I had to go out to dinner with either someone who shopped on Etsy or someone who shopped on Amazon, I would choose an Etsy person because they just generally have been more kind. And that matters. And so, yeah. And so, you know, with Amazon, if you put your product up and expect it to sell, it won't. You need to pay to play. PPC is part of the game. And Shopify, there's a saying from a really good movie, Field of Dreams. And the saying is, if you build it, they will come. And he's referring to a baseball field, but that also refers to websites. If you build a website, people will not show up. No matter how much time you spent making it look pretty, you need to drive traffic. And that can be through social media. It can be through paid media. Gets you back to the original question of, where does my audience hang out?
Yeah.
If they're on Facebook, I'm running meta ads. If they hang out on Instagram, I'm pushing there. And so there's a couple sleepers. I'll tell you, TikTok shop. I've seen some. I think there's a TikTok millionaire made every single day. And that platform's an up and comer. With the U.S. legislation right now, it's a little bit of shaky ground. But the way I view it is
It's an opportunity.
you need to have images, you need to have video, you need to have copy. If you've launched elsewhere, optimize it for TikTok and post it and see what happens.
I love that. Yeah. For people that don't know, traffic is, if it was physical, it'd be foot traffic. Traffic is visitors to your website. But if I'm selling jeans for teenage girls and I got a bunch of geriatric men in their 80s come to my site, either I'm not selling what these guys are looking for. They're not looking for jeans. Or I'm just, they're not interested in my product. And no matter how, if I bring 1 million of them to my site, I'm not going to make any sales. And there's only 3 ways to get traffic. You can buy it, borrow it, and build it. And so like you mentioned, pay per click. If you're starting out fresh, it's maybe one of the hardest ones to get right, but it's the most reliable in terms of growth on demand. It's a simple concept. I put up ads and people see the ad and then they come and buy. It's a really simple concept. It's incredibly hard to do profitably. But if you can get it to work profitably, in my opinion, that separates a lot of kind of mom and pop shops from nationwide brands. Like you look at a lot of franchises, what they are. If you look at a franchise, a lot of them they figured out the operations manual, P to Pit, McDonald's, a lot of these things. They're like Domino's Pizza. They figured out how to operate the facility to deliver the results people want. And so you pay and you get that manual. And then as a franchisee, you typically pay something like 20% to the headquarters. And what they do with that is they test marketing and they test offers. And when something works, they peel and stick everyone else's phone number and address out and roll it out. And that's what you're paying into with a franchise. You're paying into someone's already got marketing that works and they've got an operations manual for how to run the store. You buy and they give you the manual on how to run the store and you run the store and they do your marketing for you. And you typically pay them. You can do your own too, but you typically have to pay them some percentage of your revenue. And that what they're doing with that is they're basically the marketing headquarters. And that's what they're doing is that peel and stick. And for a lot of businesses, like I say, being able to profitably advertise to generate new business is what separates mom and pop shops from nationwide and international brands in a lot of cases. And then so buy traffic, borrow traffic. Right now, David's borrowing my audience. You guys are here listening to him and I talk. And so this is my pond to people. He's borrowing it. And the third one is build. And build is David's got his own podcast. He's got his own email list. He's got his own stuff. He's building maybe SEO traffic. He's building a social media following. These are things that you build over time. And those are the 3 ways to kind of get traffic. So, I guess if you're starting and you haven't built anything, you're going to try to look for people to borrow traffic from, but man, it can be tough. Why would I share my traffic with you? What do you got to offer me? And then the number one is to buy, but it's a scary thing because you can spend a lot of ad spend and have 0 results. I've seen people spend tens of thousands thinking, man, I'm going to spend 40 grand. Of course, I'm going to have some sort of results. And they just got nothing at the end of it. So it can be a nightmare. Would you agree with that? Would you add anything to that?
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. And from running my own business, it seems like as an entrepreneur, you graduate with something new like PPC if you've never done it before. Your typical entrepreneur is going to go to YouTube University and try to run it themselves. And then they will realize they're not very good at it. And they'll then go to YouTube University and hire somebody for $5 an hour on Fiverr and then give them instruction. And that they may get moderate results. And then hopefully they'll just hire an expert, which is what they should have done from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I have found for my own business, that's a positive ROI investment is getting a pro in the driver's seat on PPC. Yeah. And, now with AI driven algorithms, you used to set your bid and leave it. And most people did. Now people are changing bids like multiple times a minute. Yeah. And it's become very complicated. And so if there's anyone thinking, I'm going to self-manage PPC, those were mine. I did those. And I've done that on a lot of things. But I would say out of all the things in your business to outsource, PPC is probably like my number 1 or number 2 thing I would outsource.
Yeah. A lot of people invest in the stock market hoping to get a 5% or 10% ROI on their money. The right paid ad person, you're going to 10x at that point, especially depending on what you're selling in your market. So it's definitely worthwhile. I mean, you can shortcut the learning curve because that's the problem a lot of people see is they don't know what they don't know and they're going to figure it out and they're afraid to invest the money. And I kind of get that as well. But if there's any way to shortcut, a simple way to explain this analogy I like to use is say you and I want to go compete for judo in the Olympics. And I'm going to figure it out in a garage with my buddies and some YouTube videos. Like we're just going to train and figure it out. And we're going to win this gold medal. When you go, I'm going to go find 3 people that won gold medals and convince them to help me and coach me and mentor me to get there. And who's going to get there more likely, better, faster, with less setbacks? I mean, I have every ability to do it, right? Sure, me and my buddies, I'm a prodigal child. I'm going to figure it out with some VHS tapes and some old mattresses in my garage. We'll figure it out. Versus David, who goes and hires 3 people that have already won gold medals at the Olympics, and they invest in him, their time and energy and focus, and buy in on his success. Maybe he's paying them, maybe whatever the deal arrangement is. You just know inherently by that analogy that I am in deep trouble, right? Like David's going to kick my butt. If this is Karate Kid, I'm going to meet him and I'm not going to come home with a trophy. Not that first year. So it's like the easiest cheat code that nobody wants to accept. Like I didn't want to accept it. You didn't want to accept it. I don't know why. I don't know why that is.
Here's what I'll say about that process. If you try self-managing PPC and you fail, it makes you a better manager of the manager. So if you outsource to an agency, if you know, like, oh, in the past I got crushed on these direct campaigns, and you can be a better manager. And so, yeah, I was an agency nightmare. I fired, I'll bet probably 3 or 4 agencies. I got fired from an agency for being a real pain in the butt to deal with. And the last person I worked with, and I've got no ties to him, but he's a great dude. His name's Pat Lum, and he runs a place called Asteroid X up in Canada. And that's all I do is PPC. And I love Pat, and Pat made me a ton of money. Yeah. And he's an OG in the space. And if anyone's looking for someone good, I'd put you in touch with Pat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shout out to all the Canadians. Represent Canada. Represent. We don't got a lot to show off these days, but we got. There's some talent up there. There's some superstars. So no, I love that. That's such a shortcut if you can find reliable people. What are some of you think the most important skills or behaviors to have to grow and maintain a successful online business?
You know, I would say grit. I think if you watch social media a lot, I call them Lambros. It's the bros with the Lamborghini that say, take my course and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. Yeah. And I can tell, and I'll tell you another word, and this is just a pet peeve of mine. I really don't like when people talk about passive income, because short of investing in
Bitcoin
or like Amazon, it's not passive. Yeah. And don't be fooled. You're running a business and it's hard and you're going to have challenges, and it's going to take a while to build something cool, something that has a solid foundation. And so I think grit and determination, e-commerce is an interesting step along the path of people who try multi-level marketing, and then they'll go wholesale real estate, and then they'll stop by e-commerce for a little bit, and then they'll go on to the next get rich quick scheme. And I have found like it is a grind. It is challenging, but it is also very doable. Yeah. And if you think of e-commerce as a baseball game, we're in maybe the 3rd or 4th inning. Yeah. I mean, this industry is only going to explode from here. Yeah. And so, when I walk into a mall, I know in 10 years that'll be residential housing. I know it. Right. Because the ability to read reviews, have social trust in the product, hear what people like, what they don't like. You're never going to get that from a salesman. It reduces the risk as a consumer. And so I'm a huge advocate of e-commerce. And so I forget what your original question is, but
I was asking about the skills and behaviors to be successful.
Oh yeah. I would say grit and problem solving. Running a business is a great way to learn about yourself, and it's a great vehicle for personal development. You will be challenged. You will need to learn new things. Yeah. And I really like it. And I've grown as a person by running my own businesses and building teams. I would say mindset's a huge one. Yeah. Grit.
I love that. I think that's true. I think you can almost say the same thing about parenthood. Jim Rohn's got this thing where he talks about how his first mentor, Mr. Schulf, told him that he should make a goal to make $1 million. And he's like, no, it's not for the money. You can give the money away. It's for what you will become on the path to making the $1 million, because who you will have become. Success is something you attract. It's not something you chase. What you said, I think, is phenomenal, because as a business owner, most people have a hard time balancing their own budget. But when you have a business, the business is its own entity. It's got its own expenses and bills and credit and all that stuff. And then you have yours, and then your staff hits you up. So it's like you have to not only manage the business finances, you have to manage your own finances. In some instances, you have to manage the finances of your vendors and staff. They come hit you up for an advance or whatever. And it just, it's, you can't be afraid of it. Listen, we're all going to die as far as we know in the history of this planet. Everything that was born died. And so we're all going to die eventually. So you don't need to be so afraid. As long as you kind of got roof and ramen covered, you adopt a bit of a stoic philosophy that, this thing that's happening can't hurt me. Even if my wound is gangrene and pussing, it's not that hurts me. It's how I choose to respond to it that actually does me harm. Just try to have fun with it. And I think the best way to approach this is from a place of love, like to love on your clients. Like you mentioned, have something high quality. A lot of people are so selfish. They want to make money. It's all about them. And even in sales, a lot of people, they show up, they take it personally if somebody doesn't buy. Like, it's not about you. It's about providing a service to people that need it. You talked before about the markup on products. You're ripping them off. This is like someone that maybe they're a commercial cleaner for a company. They go, you know what? I do all the cleaning. Why do I need this company? And then they go it on their own. And then they realize, oh, geez, cleaning is just 1/5 of this. There's the finding people that need cleaning done. There's the convincing them to pay us money. There's the following up to make sure we get paid. There's the making sure that we're on top of everything and the quality's controlled. There's all the HR and the legal compliance. There's like 101 other things other than just showing up to squeegee the windows at the office, right? And so all of that has to be taken into account. And so if you think about an EpiPen, that'll save a child's life if they have a peanut allergy. And so if the EpiPen costs $1 and you sell it for $10, like, is the person going to go broke over paying you $10? Like, you get what I'm saying? So this whole 10-to-1 markup, well, to your point earlier, I think it just depends on, are you selling something that's actually valuable? And I think you get over this a lot easier if you're not selling like vape stuff or cigarettes, or if you're in an industry that actually does good for the world versus causes death, destruction, and harm. If you're helping people get hammered on a Friday night and beat each other up, I mean, there might be good money in that, but are you really leading people to fulfilling lives? Like, I don't know, you may not like that lifestyle. I know some guys that own nightclubs and it was fine for a time, but at some point you grow out of it and there's a need for that perhaps. But life, you're not a tree, so you can move and you can choose how you want to live. Like you said, you can have clients that are like Etsy people, or you can have clients that are complete jerks. It's up to you, but you have to see what's out there. You have to see what's real. You have to live in reality. So David, are there any specific habits? Like you mentioned before, like you had this window of opportunity in your mornings. Are there any sort of habits, whether they're daily, weekly, monthly, that you think are mission critical as a business owner?
Yeah. About 5 years ago, I read a book called Traction. It introduces this topic called the entrepreneurial operating system. And I implement that with every single one of my businesses. And it's an outstanding book and it's an outstanding program. And one of the things that's forced me to do is to prioritize, the highest ROI items. And it allows me to prioritize and set goals, and it provides structure to a business. And running a small business can kind of be messy. And it tidies up that mess. And it's been a great way to communicate with team members. It's been a great way to evaluate performance and set expectations. I've got nothing but good things to say about that program. And so I would say I'm not sure if you're probably looking for something like ice baths, but
well, no, I'm just like,
that would be my answer.
Once a week, you should review your cash flow projections, or as a business owner, you need to make sure you block out time to buy your competitors' products once a quarter. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. Is there anything like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, buying competitors' products. One of the things that I find helpful is being aware as a consumer. So like I shop on Amazon a lot. And one thing I try to do before I buy anything is pause and say, why did I choose that? Was it because of the reviews? Was it because of the photos? Did I watch the video? And there are so many great examples of awesome businesses out there. And I pay attention to that. I've got a folder in my desk of product inserts from companies that have nothing to do with the businesses I run, but it's products that I've bought and I've been like, oh man, I really like that. I really like how they told their story in this way. I like how they have a picture of them with their family. It kind of humanizes the business. And identifying those and then bringing them into your own business is great. Harry's Razors is, whoever does their marketing is just rock solid. And when I'm talking to my video editor, I will send him a Harry's link and say, I want it to be like this style and vibe. And that's it. And like when you're giving people instruction, like it's really helpful to say like, hey, this is an example of what I think looks really, really good. And so, yeah, paying attention as a consumer. And it's interesting,
Yeah.
like what that'll do for your own business.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful. You got it. Cause that's at the end of the day, people are voting with their dollars. And if you're not on top of the consumer and the experience and how people are buying and shopping, the business graveyard's littered with world-class products and services that nobody knew about, or they just couldn't present themselves properly. I think that's super powerful. David, this has been great. I literally have a page of notes. This has been really good. I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that I should have asked you?
No, this has been a great interview. It's been fun catching up with you. And yeah, looking forward to staying in touch and having you
Well,
back on Firing the Man.
and if people want to, so first off, if you heard him say that, Firing the Man, that's his podcast. You can check him out. David Schomer, Schomer. If people do want to have you take a look at their e-commerce store, if they want to have some, what are some of the best ways for them to get in touch to get your expert advice and opinion on stuff?
Absolutely. I would say if you have a Shopify store that does $250,000 or more a month in revenue, hit me up at david@buildgrowscale.com. I'm the CEO of Build Grow Scale. They've been around for a decade. And when I was running my own e-commerce businesses, always a company I always looked up to and admired. They've been an OG in the space. And so we've got a great team over there. And then if you're interested in the podcast or just getting in touch with me, David@FiringTheMan is my email, or hit me up on socials @FiringTheMan.
Got it. So look up @Firing the Man on social media. Send an email to david@buildgrowscale.com if you've got a Shopify store doing at least $250,000 a year. And if you have some questions, you can just email david@firingtheman.com. David, this has been an honor and a pleasure. I really enjoy our conversations. I love your story. Probably want to have to come back at some point in time. Thank you for coming and sharing with my audience and I, knowing you've got your own podcast, your own following, your own 3 kids to chase around your bees, your businesses. Thank you for coming and sharing with all of us so we could all do a little bit better.
That sounds great, Daryl. It was great chatting with you and looking forward to staying in touch.